Lingüa Brütallica is a podcast that uses ethnographic interviews to study language use in the extreme metal community. We are studying a music scene known for its love of themes and topics generally considered offensive, and it is likely that some episodes will touch on topics or opinions some listeners may find tasteless or ethically problematic. Ethnographic researchers aim to adopt the interviewee's point of view so that we can draw out and study the attitudes, beliefs, and practices that are important to them. We want to make it clear that in presenting these conversations here, we do not endorse any of their content. Our aim is to explore the thought processes behind language use in this long-running, international, and yet understudied scene. Welcome to Lingüa Brütallica. My name is Jess Birnie-Smith. I'm a sociolinguist working primarily with Chinese and Indonesian languages.
And my name is Wes Robertson. I am a sociolinguist focusing on writing systems, particularly Japanese. Jess and I have started an article looking at the use of language in metal in Asia, and we decided it was kind of an interesting concept that we'd like to expand, realizing that while metal has been studied, language use, even in English, hasn't. And so we thought we'd kind of add some data to that and begin a kind of casual podcast discussing the topic. For our first episode, we are here with Andrew Hudson of Harlott. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you? Yeah, I'm okay. It's Friday. I'm not sure if that's relevant to the podcast, but when it's being recorded, it's Friday.
Put things in context.
That's good. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we really want to ask you about how you go about writing lyrics, what kind of inspiration you've drawn on, and about particular lyrical choices that you've made as well. But before getting into all that, I just wanted to ask you if you could just describe Harlott's music, just as if you were describing it for someone who's never heard of Harlott before, ever.
Right. Well, assuming familiarity with the genre, Harlott is very, very much just a kind of cookie cutter thrash metal band. Not reinventing any wheels. It's just that 80s Bay Area kind of sound with a bit of that German Teutonic vibe that we stole from elsewhere. It's fast and angry music with a kind of aggressive sound, I guess. Like most metal. It kind of borders on that unlistenable, but we try and keep things interesting and melodic in our own way. Not a great pitch. It's honest. It's thrash metal.
What specifically attracted you to, I guess, metal music and that style? Is thrash kind of the genre that you've always, or the subgenre that you've always gravitated to?
I'm not sure what made me land on thrash metal as the one that I preferred. As much as it was that kind of gut feeling, it was the one that always excited me the most. I would listen to a bit of all kinds of metal, particularly growing up when you go through that explorative period in your life when you discover all these different styles of the same kind of thing. Thrash metal was always the one that just excited me the most. I'm not sure if it was probably wasn't the image, but it was definitely something about the sound that sonically interested me. And just particularly the delivery of the vocals, I always enjoyed the most, just because it reminded me mostly of just kind of the aggression that matched the music. I certainly wasn't brought up on it.
What was your first band that you was thrash the first metal genre that you listened to?
I think I was about 7 years old when I was introduced to the first ever metal band, but it was Metallica's Reload came out that year, and I had an older brother who had it, and that was by no means was that a thrash metal release, but after Reload you go back through Metallica's back catalogue, you start listening to their faster, more aggressive stuff, then you listen to Megadeth. I remember the first time I heard Slayer, probably wasn't the sound that sonically me, and just particularly the delivery of the vocals enjoyed the most.
So, did you ever pay attention to the lyrics early on when you were first introduced to thrash metal?
I think I may have paid a bit more attention in my earlier years. Particularly with the bands that I was kind of, the beautiful thing about when you discover bands is you kind of discover the bigger bands. And the bigger bands are bigger bands for good reasons. And a lot of the time with thrash metal, if the higher caliber bands just generally had better lyrical content, so you would listen to kind of thought provoking and stuff that was well delivered with good imagery, political or historical, topics that were actually kind of engaging and interesting. So Yeah, at the start, you definitely pay attention to that, particularly with the Bay Area bands. It's less so when you move across to the European bands that are of course forced to sing in a language that isn't their first, and often there's a bit of a translation error. So some of that is a little bit less inspiring, but there was definitely a lot to kind of get excited about particularly when you're first listening to these bands, because you've never heard that kind of language use, and that kind of those topics aren't really covered much in popular music, at least.
Do you remember like a specific artist or specific song that for you was fundamental and be like, oh, this is what metal lyrics sound like. This is what this song's lyrics are metal. Like that kind of conception that this is different from how other genres sing. This is how metal sings. Was there like a specific introduction to that idea?
Man, it's hard to pinpoint, exactly when you have that realization, but everyone knows the first line of Angel of Death by Slayer. Because that is, to open a song like that and you have that realization, you're like, wow, you can really sing about whatever the fuck you want. Like, pardon my French, but there is nothing you can't get away with here. And, particularly when you're a rebellious, angsty teen, you're kind of like, yeah, this is going to upset people. And, there is that kind of rebellion mentality when you're listening to that kind of music.
Was there anything else about the lyrics that you found particularly appealing? Because you mentioned some of the topics that are covered in the lyrics. I was wondering, if there are any other features that really spoke to you early on.
There's something beautiful. I'm gonna talk about Slayer a lot because, as far as I'm concerned, they are they're the yardstick that you should compare all other thrash bands to. Because there's no one is doing it better. No one's doing it better than them because they are the genre. And lyrically, Tom Araya he does this beautiful kind of thing where he doesn't so much like describe an action or a motive or he doesn't tell a story. He just kind of dances around imagery, and he just uses like dark words and dark phrasing to kind of invoke more of a feeling than it is like tell a tale. So he just kind of, it's like, and he gets real creative with it. The way he talks about things, it just, he just finds the right word to picture, like to conjure up the right image for these ideas, rather than the Megadeth songs where he kind of sings about things happening.
So do you think that kind of jumping around the issue or talking about imagery feels more metal to you than talking about things kind of in more realistic, direct terms?
I personally avoid trying to talk about issues, just because I'm not sure if there's ever a message that I want to get across with my music so much as there is a feeling that I want to get across with the music. And like jumping around a topic and like just kind of describing it in as many ways as you can, and describing it in as descriptive and like visceral ways as you can. Often it suits the music a lot better than any kind of clear-cut like message or call to arms that a lot of other bands will try and do.
I assume that means that then listeners engage with the music in a quite a diverse array of ways then.
I'd say so. I do get asked a lot about what messages I'm trying to get across with my music, and like the truth is I'm not sure if I ever really do have a message. So it's kind of the beautiful thing about art is it's open to interpretation. Like if someone hears the things that I've written and wants to take something away from it, then by all means. But it's never really my intention. It's more just to try and create a bit of an experience for whoever listens to it.
I'm actually kind of surprised by that because I was reading some of your lyrics, and I guess maybe I was reading into them too much. But I thought that some of them had a message that was not direct, like a hey, this is the message of the song thing. But I noticed a lot of lyrics kind of talked about society and environment. There were a number of ones that seemed to critique religion. Are these not messages you intended?
No, look, they're 100%. You're definitely right. A majority of the lyrics are about just the general problems with humanity, and I find religion is an inexhaustible barrel of just kind of motivation for me to put pen to paper. But they're kind of more like observations than they are like if that makes sense. I just kind of write about what I see rather than about what I want or what I think should be the case. I just kind of these things happen and we're all aware of it.
I think that's a really interesting comment, because other musicians that we've spoken to have kind of said similar things. Even in the case where their lyrics do seem to have quite overt political messages, they've said that, that's not necessarily a message that they intend to convey. And I suppose I wonder if this is something that's quite kind of essential to metal in some ways, in a way that kind of differentiates it from other similar genres. Did you have any thoughts on that, I suppose?
Well, I guess, we do live in a pretty this is like the peak of cancel culture as well. So there's a possibility that people aren't really willing to stand behind their messages that they put in their art. There is also the fact that these kind of songs and these these anti-establishment, anti-government, anti-religious, these themes aren't new in music, and nothing's changed so far. So there's not much point in trying to get too involved in it. You just write about what you see, and the music that I write suits the ideas that you get across with those words. It's not so much, it's just the observations rather than the actual message.
But those observations have some kind of message to them, right? In a way, because they are based on how you feel about things to some extent, right? If someone came up to you and said, I like your lyrics because they're so meaningless, how would you feel about that?
I'd be devastated that someone had gotten to the root of my art so effectively. I write deliberately obtuse phrases in some of the lyrics just because of, I appreciate the way they sound, and I acknowledge that they can be interpreted in several different ways. And, I love using double meanings in some of my phrases, and I do try and leave a little bit of interpretation to how you want to, pull apart the words. So it's, I don't think people come up to me and go, that song really spoke to me because, it's how I felt at this particular time in my life. But I definitely, to have someone say that they were nonsensical would be, a little bit hurtful, but it's fine.
Conversely, I guess, have you ever listened to a metal song that you thought was like really, really good in terms of the music, but the lyrics were just not metal and it kind of ruined things?
All the time. I consistently listen to bands that either overreach or under target, something that just doesn't really suit what they're trying to do. But I'm an aggressive critic on everyone else's craft, and I'm not going to name names because I can't recall them for the life of me. But
also no need to make enemies today.
I've got enough. One of the things that'll happen when you go overseas and play tours is in every city that you play, people in the local band will come up and give you an album. And they were like, you've got to listen, check this out. I really like your band. Here's my band's album. And you're always super thankful. And you do actually listen to it. You don't just throw it straight in the bin. But there's like an anything goes with lyrics kind of level of commitment in some of these bands where they'll be singing, the music's okay, but the guy's just going, he just sings about how he reaches for his knife and how he stabs you in the throat and how he watches the blood come out. And he just kind of describes like a blow by blow stabbing someone to death. And it's not interesting. It's not creative. It's not artistic. And it just ruins the song because it's so cringe.
Is there a difference between how a band that's known for that kind of stuff, like maybe Cannibal Corpse does it, compared to how those bands do it?
Well, Cannibal Corpse lyrics you have to look up. No one's listening to that band being like, I can't believe what this bloke is saying. You read the words in the booklet and go, I can't believe that. What's what he was saying. It's not a part of the music. Like, the actual sonic experience of Cannibal Corpse isn't the things that he's saying. It's the sound that he's making. And, where do
the lyrics fit in then for you?
As part of the shock marketing. Okay, I can say whatever I want about that band. They're on the same record label.
But like, if you looked at the lyrics and they were like, Kumbaya, my lord, Kumbaya, that would impact the metalness of Cannibal Corpse a little bit.
I listen to, on a regular basis, I listen to a band called Mortification. And they're a Christian death metal band from Melbourne. They've been around since the 80s. And, their albums are like, a lot of their songs are about like the chapters of the Bible that kind of get brushed over, like characters like the Mephibosheth and, the scrolls of the Megaloth. And like, just because they're not singing about, death and murder and destruction, they're singing about, angels' influence on man. It can still be delivered in an aggressive way. And I haven't found that it detracts from the sound of the music too much or the feeling of the music. But you will definitely get a bit of shit if you wear their merch in public.
So where's that line then? As in, like, when you read metal lyrics, like, at what point does it feel like it's not metal to you? Like, when do you read something and say, like, this does not fit my definition of metal lyrics?
Well, metal's so broad. Like, you can get away with absolutely anything you want, like both musically and lyrically. And it's not so much that I don't think it's metal as it is it's metal that does absolutely nothing for me.
Well, what makes lyrics do nothing for you metally, I suppose, to rephrase
Oh,
Metally.
what metally misses my metal mark? Honestly, that's a hard one to answer because I don't listen to the bands that do it. Like, I will unashamedly listen to pirate metal bands and those. Oh, hang on, here's one. Songs about beer.
Okay.
Songs about beer and drinking can fuck off. Like, it's such a sad kind of market ploy to just kind of acknowledge the culture of alcoholism in this genre and be like, let's write a song for the people that should really call their children more often.
Is it just like the lack of creativity there that really grinds your gears, or?
Yeah, and like, I mean, if someone wrote an incredible song about Pinot Noir and was like beautiful with it, I'd be stoked. But it's always just about drinking beers and swilling rum and it's uncreative and unadventurous and it destroys art as far as I'm concerned.
So would you say language use in general in metal that seems one note or uncreative, like that doesn't have any peculiarity or isn't doing something new or at least individual, is something that you find to be, again, we don't want to say not metal, but not what you're looking for in metal?
Yeah, look, there's certain topics that, don't do much for me, and I think particularly there's like deliveries of topics that don't do anything for me. And I think the thing that annoys me about the drinking songs is because it's such a base and crass kind of topic, and because of the target market, you're not going to write thought-provoking and like elegant songs about drinking beer, because that's not who it's for. So the way people sing, or the way people write their lyrics for these songs about those kind of topics, they do it in a really direct, no bullshit kind of manner, and that kind of thing just doesn't excite me.
It
can happen on 80 topics.
Not base and crass in a way, though.
Sorry,
like you mentioned, like a lot of experience in like death metal and stuff. The songs about just murdering people. Would that not fit in the base and crass kind of? I mean, especially to an outsider.
Oh yeah, it absolutely does.
Okay.
There's creative ways and like of talking about your vehement distaste for a person and the things that you fantasize about doing to them, and then there's really just blunt and to the point songs about inflicting trauma, and there's going to be 1,000 examples of almost exactly the same song lyrically, or like content wise, that are approached in two very different ways lyrically, and one of them is kind of one of them's dancing around a topic and kind of building up a bit of a tension or like an artistic enthusiasm, and the other one's just straight to the point. And I mean, you've read you brought up Cannibal Corpse. You've read the way those lyrics are written. They are, if nothing else, they are colorful and creative in the way that they talk about the most disgusting topics that you could possibly put in a song.
Sure.
So then is it more like the expression rather than the subject matter that's important to you then?
I think so, and I think it might be my high school debating that kind of got me. It's a manner of a matter kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You could make any topic good if you lyricize it in the right manner, and you could make it the most exciting thing in the world quite bland if you got Paul Jennings to write it. Like,
speaking of high school,
that leads to kind of an interesting question then. Like, how would you go about rendering a topic that you wouldn't necessarily associate with metal?
I don't know, but you've given me a challenge for album 5.
You're welcome.
I think you have to write a song about drinking beer and make it interesting.
That's one thing I've promised myself I'll never do. Mm-hmm. Is I will never do the alcohol song. I succumbed pretty hard when I wrote the classic. Every thrash metal band at some point, well, particularly the old ones, have got a song that's just about the band. There's the Whiplashes and I can't remember what the Megadeth one is, but there's always like a song that's just about the band. And I kind of half did one of those, and I felt disgusting enough doing that. But I'll at least never do the alcohol song. But I will write a really dark kind of ode to the repotting and cutting of camellias using a rooting hormone. So there's my topic that I'll make a metal song about.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, can't wait.
Speaking of high school debate though and stuff, when did you start writing metal lyrics? Were you doing that in high school, or was the first time you actually sat down, like put pen to paper and was like, I'm going to write the lyrics to a metal song?
I would have been a good 14, 15. well, you know, because the band's been around a lot longer than I'm. It was one of those high school battle of the bands kind of things, and as much as the lineup that existed that day has well and truly gone, it was, you know, it was that point that I started the band and the movement and moved from there. And you know, I was writing songs as a 16, 17-year-old boy, and I was writing words for them, and they were inspired legitimately by items that I found in Diablo 2, just because I was clutching onto anything, because, you know. That's fine. I've got lyrics from Dota and Warcraft. I've got lines that just items. There's a Battle Fury. There's a you know, I found a shield with my necromancer character called Pain Emblem, and that was one of the first songs I ever wrote.
Is there a difference between how you're writing back then and how you write now? Like how do you see different?
I definitely hold myself to a higher standard now. But yeah, as we were saying, like, it doesn't really matter what it's about, as long as you kind of approach it in a manner that makes it sound good to the music. It's, you know, you can write a song about a shield if you want to.
Okay, so I mean, does that mean that you've engaged with metal in different ways across, you know, the time in which you've been involved in the scene?
Yeah, it's you know, I don't want to do it because I know you had other interviewers, but it was such a long time ago. It's kind of hard to remember what motivated you at that point, but there was definitely a time in my younger life where I was much more kind of into the metal thing than I am now. It was, you know when you would like live and die for it when you were a kid, like it was all you cared about. You used to doodle on your on your desk at school and you know, draw pentagrams on your textbooks. There was definitely a time when I took it a little bit more seriously, and that's possibly when I guess at that point I would have decided what I wanted to sing about, and the only thing that I've kept from that is the way in which I lyricize those ideas. You know, the things
great,
that
because that's what I was going to ask about next. Yeah, it's like, you know, if that.
Sorry, mate.
No, that's great actually, because yeah, I wanted to know, like, if you know, those differences in how you're engaging with and perceiving metal have influenced changes in how you've written metal lyrics.
There's something that I'm really horribly guilty of, and if you've read my lyrics, you'll know that I like, a lot of my lines are just kind of standalone lines. Like, if I do a verse of 8 lines, it'll be 8 kind of just standalone phrases. And that's something that I definitely still hold on to, because I found that it's not only is it really easy, it's the easiest way to churn out, like, because I gotta put a lot of words to these songs, because I write them with like just vocal phrasing in mind, and then when I sit there I go, fuck, this is like 84 syllables that I've got to put into this 12-second segment. So breaking it up into little ideas is the easiest way to just just kind of quick fire little phrases off and little ideas. And I've been doing that for as long as I've ever written lyrics. And I think that's Slayer's fault. I think World Painted Blood was some of the best vocal deliveries and like lyrical ideas I've ever heard, and I've just kind of used that as a cookie cutter for the rest of my life.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't want to go into like a specific topic or have like clear, like, this is my opinion kind of thing, but it seems like you do spend a lot of time writing and revising your lyrics. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that the lyrics of your music are an extremely important part of your art, right?
They are. There's something that I'm really proud of, and as far as like revising them and going over them is concerned, it's a majority of that is just making sure that I haven't invented too many words, because sometimes there's I've used words that I know they're not actually you wouldn't get any points for it on letters and numbers or countdown, but they when there's a word that's not a word, but if you write it down and someone reads it, they know exactly what you mean.
Well, I believe you used the word hierophobia in one of your songs, and
hierophobia, yes.
I did find Google hits for it, but there were not many. So I think I don't know if that classifies the word, but yeah, is that what you're talking about? Again,
there's a character in the 3rd act of Diablo 2 called the Hierophant, and obviously hierophobia, just applying the religious hiero part and just saying that you're scared of it.
76 results on Google for hierophobia, and
24 of them are going to be download links to pirate sites for my music.
It is interesting. Did you mean heterophobia? Is
heterophobia?
Yeah, Google thinks that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that might have been what I meant. I do a lot of revision on my lyrics just to make sure that I don't take too many liberties. And there's a lot of the time where I've picked a word because it'll sound good. or because it'll fit, the amount of syllables I need. But then I need to do a quick thesaurus check to make sure that I haven't taken too many liberties with how I'm applying it.
Have you ever looked at a lyric and been like, this just isn't metal enough, and then changed it?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a concrete example?
I couldn't tell you because I got rid of it so long ago. Like, if those lines don't make the cut, they're gone, and I banished them from my mind. There definitely would have been phrases that were just kind of too plain, like, a whole line of 1 or 2 syllable words, and I'm like, that's not good enough. I need to get more creative there. I need to sub something out, make it a bit more dire or evil, or I need to stop using proper nouns, too many yous and we's and theys and whatnot. I could not recall a single line that didn't make the cut. But if I did recall them, I'd probably be too proud to admit them and read them out to you now.
I was wondering, because you talked about matching the lyrics to the music. What's the process there? As in, do you write because I know you write the music as well. Like, do you write the music first and then like write lyrics to fit that, or like are they done sequentially?
I'm a music first kind of man. So it's usually like the whole song will get penned start to finish, and only rarely will I have like a concept or something I want to write a song about, or something. Sometimes I'll just think of a really cool phrase and go, ooh, that'll sound great in a chorus, and then I can build a whole song off that. I'll be like, all right, so I've picked a theme. I'm going to write a song about that at some point, and then once I've written the song, I go, all right, now I'm going to put in everything else around it, knowing that there's that one line in the chorus that I was really stoked with.
So the lyrics and the music definitely work together. It's not like one comes as an afterthought.
There's sometimes when it's like a lyrical idea will drive the song, particularly if I've got sometimes themes don't want a certain sound. Like there's songs I'm guilty of writing really just kind of like head bop and thrash metal. It's like there's nothing minor about it. It's all just like catchy hooks and fast riffs, and you can't write like really dark lyrics about those. You kind of have to write the angrier stuff or the more psychotic and manic songs about those.
Why not?
So, it would sit wrong with me. Obviously, you could, but it's not something that I would do. Which I guess is the only thing I can answer for today is these are the things that I do, and this is how I go about my process.
So by dark, you mean more kind of the themes that you'd see in like maybe black metal, or? Yeah,
there's definitely more of I would have sent you the lyrics to the 4th album, but there's a couple of songs on that are more kind of dismal, I guess is a word for it. They're more kind of songs that revolve around like hopelessness and being lost, rather than they are about killing everyone and the fact that God's a bastard. And when you write songs like that, you need to, when you know that that's what the song's going to be about. Like, you may not have the lyrics, but you know that you've got this chorus line, and you know that the song's going to be about this. You need to keep that in mind when you write the music itself, because you need to make sure that it's kind of cohesive to the theme. So I do that a little bit. I'd say 90% of the time I write a whole song start to finish with lyrics, music, and then I'll put lyrics to it later. But there's a couple of examples where I would have written music dependent on a lyrical theme that I was definitely going to go with for that piece. I have no idea if that's what you asked me about.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Yeah.
You just got an answer.
It's a good one. Yeah,
no, that's great, actually. Yeah, because I mean, is it mostly when the the theme of the lyrics is going to be very divergent from what you would normally do, that then you have to like break from the practice of writing the music first and then writing the lyrics later?
Yeah, it's very much the case of when you know that these lyrics are going to be a little bit removed from what you're used to, from your wheelhouse, if you will. You need to pay special attention to make sure that the music is befitting to that. And it can be as simple as a run that you're doing, an opening riff, and you move a couple of notes around. You can change it from being like quite a powerful or staunch feel to be a kind of decrepit feel. Like it's all about majors and minors, and it's knowing when to use majors and when to use minors can really make or break the feel of a song.
Is there a little bit of a risk in thrash that, like, compared to against something like Cannibal Corpse, your lyrics are a bit more intelligible? Like people might actually hear it the first time and understand what you're saying?
Well, I kind of pride myself on being reasonably
intelligible.
Intelligible. I was going to say that, and I thought it was wrong. I was about to say legible. That's even more wrong. But yeah, I kind of pride myself on a delivery where you can listen to it and pick out the words if you so choose to. And it has because that being part of the sound, it has made me work a lot harder to make sure that, if people were going to sit there and decipher what it was I was yelling about, that they would, that they would see that it is appropriate to the music. So I do put a lot of work into making sure that not only can I be understood, but the things that I'm saying are understandable.
Are you ever concerned then that you'll include something that's going to receive a response that you don't anticipate?
You kind of let go of that after a while. You pay special attention. You're really kind of nervous the first kind of few times that you put music out, and then there's this. Once it's out there, it's done. Like, it's out of your hands by then, and people will interpret any way they want, and people do. And people often come to me and say that, their favorite piece on this album was this song, and that was the one that you put the least amount of effort into, because you never know what people are actually going to enjoy. And so there's like an anxiety about how it's going to be received right up until the point where it actually is received, and then you stop caring.
Well, I suppose at this point you also know your audience pretty well. So
yes.
You have an idea of how they're going to interpret it, right?
Yeah, and if any of them can be bothered to pick up a dictionary, I look forward to them telling me exactly what they think of the lyrics.
This is actually this leads to a question we're going to ask later, but might as well bring it up. Assuming that you assume that some of your fans might not understand some of the words that you use, I guess first, why do you use them, and do you think the use of these hard to understand words is really key to producing metal via lyrics?
Well, I particularly feel sorry for the foreign listeners of mine. There's a lot of people in South America that get into the music, as well as a lot of I don't have to worry about Germans. Their English is often impeccable, but a lot of the Spanish and Italian fans that we have, I can imagine they would have a difficult time knowing what a lot of what I'm singing about is. But I don't so much want to pander to the expectation as I do want to write lyrics for my own requirements. And I'm way too intellectually insecure to let things go out that like don't sound super smart. Like, I need to project myself as some kind of modern day Wordsworth.
Well, we had an interview with a musician from Japan who actually also said that he likes to play at being a scholar in his lyrics. And I'm just curious, like, why do you think that lyrics which have kind of big words, earlier in this interview, you even mentioned like, oh, there aren't enough syllables in this word. I want more syllables. Why do you feel that's kind of important to lyrics, to making metal lyrics, especially, I suppose? I
mean, it's more of a coincidence that all the big syllable words happen to be the most enjoyable ones to both use and to hear, as far as I'm concerned. It's that beautiful thing about the English language is like it's so diverse, and there's so many obscene amounts of ways of saying exactly the same thing that you would be a fool to just go with the basic one that everyone knows when you could find one that's got a bit more of a particular feel. There's ways of saying exactly the same things that might have a more percussive nature, or they might have a more like elongated nature, or they might have more of a direct nature. And depending on what you need to fill in a piece of music, there's so many different ways that you can like say the same thing but have it fit fit the music that you're writing. And so I write fast music, and I put heaps of words in, as many syllables in as I can, because it helps the phrenicity of the song. Like, if you could say the same thing in 15 syllables that you could in 9, but if you say it in 15 syllables in the same amount of time, it's going to sound faster and it's going to sound more manic. So with that in mind, I always try and find the larger ways of saying things, so that I can kind of get the same point across, but with more of a manic feel. And those larger words, I try and find the ones with a hard kind of consonants, or the at least the darker sound to them.
What gives it that darker sound then? Like for your ear?
Well, it's because of what they've been historically used for in the past. It's not so much that the word itself has a sound that makes you weep, but there's certain words that only get used in certain situations, and those situations are always the grim or the dire or the morose or the morbid, and and if you use those words more, obviously you're going to conjure up what everyone associates those words with, and it just helps finish the feel.
So would you say that certain words have a history that's a bit more metal than others?
Yeah, there's definitely words that are totally acceptable to use in everyday conversation that people don't, because of what they've historically been used for in the past. But those words are absolutely fair game if you're writing metal songs.
Is that true about your band name in a way? Because I mean, Harlott, for instance,
Yes.
is certainly a word with a number of synonyms. But like, is the word harlot metal in a way that a word like prostitute or like thought is not?
Did you say thought?
Yeah, you can even put two T's at the end. Just like harlot.
I mean, yeah. Well, the two T's at the end of harlot is, for some reason, people were saying Harlow, and I shit you not. I thought it was a reasonably common word that everyone understood, but evidently not everyone listened to Les Miserables as much as I did in their youth. So, yeah, I put the extra T on there to make sure everyone realised that it was a hard T, and it just kind of stuck. And I never saw a need to change the band name, despite how many questions you'll get in interviews. people in Europe going, "Do you actually know what the word means?" And you're like, "Of course I do. I speak English." And yeah, this is something I've been wearing for a long time, but band name changes are a difficult thing to do. And I think there's been 1,000 times that I've possibly tried to justify the use of that word in a band name to say that it does fit with the image and it does fit with the theme. But the truth is, it was just a cool sounding word when I was 15 years old.
But do you think that word specifically, compared to, again, like synonyms like prostitute or something, is more metal?
Harlot is definitely the most metal way of saying, I'd say it's a metal sounding way of saying Lady of the Night. I don't think prostitute would work as a band name.
Why do you think Harlot is the most metal way of saying Lady of the Night?
That hard T. Wouldn't want to call your band whore. It just wouldn't work.
You have a song called Whore, though.
I have a song called Whore. Yeah, I do. I need to thank certain people in my life for inspiring that one. I have a song called Whore because one syllable word song titles are kind of my jams. And as opposed to how I do my lyrics, if I'm doing a song title, you give them a one syllable word that everyone knows that is unmistakable. You absolutely know, no one has to look at that and be like, I wonder what that song's about. You go, bam, here is what the song's about. And then there's a lot of one syllable, one word song titles.
Does Harlot have a history, do you think, is metal as well? Is that kind of history involved in what makes Harlot a good name for you?
What do you mean?
Like earlier you said that some words have like a history of use that makes them more metal. Is that true with Harlot? Is that involved at all?
Oh God, not really. I wouldn't have put that much thought into it back in the day.
Okay.
But I don't regret the band name. And what was more powerful than the word was the sick logo that you can get drawn up of it. And, we've had a great logo, and so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, as you probably know, right? There's a pretty common practice in metal band names and track titles and stuff in using a lot of kind of archaic equivalents of modern day words. I was wondering if that's ever a consideration for you, as it relates to Harlot.
Yeah, it's not a consideration, but it's definitely true. It's using the old school words for things is a very metal trope.
What about the logo? You mentioned, the logo, and the logo is really cool. I think we should try to get like an image of it when we upload this. But why are certain logos metal?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about is heavy metal logos, in the same way that like heavy metal lyrics are genre dependent and band names are genre dependent. There's just a way that you can draw band logos that makes you know exactly what the kind of music is. Black metal bands have that illegible scrawl. Thrash metal bands have lots of points, lots of sharp lines, and lots of really just kind of bold in your face looks. And that's, an extension from the 80s heavy metal look, which was just, there was no misinterpretation of what that could be. It was something that could be, quite easily drawn, easily recognizable, and very legible, and just kind of looked pointy and sharp and metal. The logo we have for Harlot is, all of those things. You can read it. It's recognizable. It's got lots of sharp edges and lots of lines. And if you can be bothered to take the time, you can learn to draw it really quickly, which is helpful for when you're signing backstage rooms. These are just my thought processes.
No, it's great.
No,
it's
fascinating. Interesting.
Like I think me and Jess will be talking about this a bit after. But you've inadvertently mentioned a lot of fundamental ideas that are part of linguistic theories. Which has been really fascinating to kind of think about in the back of my mind. Like, oh yeah, that aligns with this fundamental paper from like the 1990s.
You're welcome.
No, it's great. It's good because it means that if we ever want to write about this, we can easily put it in communication with existing work. So,
I've already signed my rights to that one, haven't I?
Although it seems as if we could have developed a metal band instead of spending years and years getting a PhD, we would have come across some of the same conclusions.
True.
Yeah, you probably keep a better caliber of people in your life.
What about this is a really
2020 isn't a good year to talk about the prospects of being a musician.
Academia is not in the safest place either. Yeah. This is a very specific question, and it may seem kind of strange, but do you think there's any difference between like how Australian metal bands use language compared to bands overseas? Like, have you ever read a band's lyrics and been like, these people are Australian?
Only if they're making it really obvious that they're Australian, and there is some really like cringy bands that will play off the Australiana thing because when you do go overseas to play shows, you'll have so many people telling you that you should be writing songs about crocodiles and kangaroos and going walkabout because they don't care about your artistic integrity. They're just telling you the dumb shit that they want to hear. And some bands do come back from those tours and go, you know what, there might be a dollar in this, and they will write deliberately Australian things, and they will record their vocals in a deliberately ochre manner. And that's the only time I can think that it happens, because the rest of the time, every Australian band is doing their best to emulate the United States in their sound, both in the content of their lyrics and in the accent in which they deliver them.
You don't think there's any local innovation going on that pushes back against or challenges some of the norms that come out of the US?
If there is, I haven't heard it. If there is a song that you would consider to be completely, what's the word I'm after? A song that's got nothing to do with Australia or nothing to do with being in Australia or being an Australian, just a general topic. I can't think of any examples where there's a particularly Australian way that it's being delivered. Not in all my years of having heard songs or listened to them.
And obviously, we know that you're familiar with scenes overseas. Like, would you say then that like the scene in Australia is kind of comparable to that you'd see elsewhere in the English-speaking world?
I think Australia's scene is actually, everyone talks about how great the Australian bands are, and you kind of you go, well, if it's all you've ever played with, it's all you've ever known, then it's understandable. But and you compare it to the success and fame that you see, all these overseas bands having, and it isn't until you go over there and you realize that there is just as many, B grade bands in every other country in the world as there are in Australia, that you realize the selling point and the unique experience that you get in Australia is because of how enormous this country is and how relatively small the population is. You need to work extremely hard to get anything to work for you. So, the okay bands in Australia are like a really high caliber by like European standards. Like bands of Australia that are at the same level, when they go overseas, they realize that I don't know how to describe this. You can get away with a lot more in Europe because it's so much easier to play to full nightclubs, and you can tell that with the bands when you watch them and you listen to their music. You go, you guys aren't even trying. Whereas we have to spend like 15 grand just to get overseas to do anything. So, it's only happening to the ones that are really willing to work quite hard.
Do you think there are like lyrical like topics or themes that I suppose are received really well in Australia that maybe like aren't received as well overseas, or vice versa?
I should know that, because I know there's been a couple of examples where people have questioned me about like a song that goes off in Australia, but overseas they're like, why would you sing about that? I can't remember which ones they are in particular. It might actually be heretic.
Right.
But the problem is, it's because I make a joke about the song being called Hairy Dick. And in Europe, they don't realize that it's a joke. So afterwards, they're like, why would you write a song about your penis? And you go, I didn't.
You think like Australia, maybe not in the lyrics that are printed, but do you think at an Australian show, maybe there's a bit more acceptance of humor, or
there's some countries. There's some countries where it doesn't go down at all. Obviously, a lot of that's the language barrier. I try and be amusing in between songs. It's just something I've always felt comfortable doing, and you do have to modify it for the countries in which English is less of a staple for them. You can still make the same kind of jokes, but you just kind of have to simplify them a bit more and make the hand and the face gestures a lot more flamboyant to get your point across, so that they can see the manner in which you're trying to interact with them.
In some subgenres of metal and scenes, it seems that humor in general is just out. Do you feel it's difficult to work humor into metal, or are you just fine with it?
I'm fine with it, and it's never got me in too much trouble. And I think the less seriously you take it, the more upset people will get if you're really good. And it just seems silly to me to take metal that seriously in this day and age, when everyone's just doing it out of a love for the music. No one's really making a living out of this, at least at my level. So if you're not, having fun with it, and I don't know why you would do it. And the good thing about having fun with it is you can see bands when bands are having fun doing what they're doing, you can see it, and it makes you enjoy it more. It's like when you watch a terrible sitcom. Like, the jokes might not be funny, but they put a laugh track in there for a reason. It's so that you feel more comfortable enjoying humor. And if you're watching a band that are just kind of laughing and having a good time, you're going to have a laugh and have a good time.
Is that true in the lyrics too? If you read the lyrics, you think like, this was like something that was fun to write. They put a lot of thought into this. That makes the entire experience more enjoyable.
Oh God, I hadn't thought of that. I appreciate like well-crafted lyrics, but sometimes things only bother you when they're really bad. And like the difference between incredible lyrics and good lyrics isn't as big of a difference as there is between like okay lyrics and bad lyrics. Like I can be completely turned off by a band if their lyrics are terrible, but I'm not going to be like disappointed in a band because their lyrics were just okay.
So to what extent would you say that kind of like humor-driven approach to lyrics and crowd engagement is kind of particular to thrash? I'm just wondering, in comparison to other subgenres of metal.
It's probably less common in thrash metal. Thrash metal does take itself.
Oh, interesting.
I feel that at least. The larrikinism in particular, but that's a more of an Australian thing. Like if Australian bands are more often than not willing to employ humor in their sets than overseas bands typically would. But on a global scale, thrash metal's a bit of a serious genre. And particularly the fan base, you can't get away with too much because they do take it really seriously because they've been listening to it since the 80s, and like people form their entire personality around heavy metal sometimes. And so if you get up in front of a room full of staunch Polish gentlemen who have been listening to metal since you were years before your conception, if you get up there and take the piss out of their beloved music, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. So you have to. There's certain genres that I think that would be more true of than others, particularly in metal. There's some genres that are meant to be fun, and obviously you can make as many jokes as you want in those kind of sets. But yeah, stuff like thrash, you need to be respectful. I think if you were making jokes and also your band sucked, you'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and that's always the way.
I don't think that flies too well. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking like in comparison to, I don't know, like let's say black metal and like grindcore on the other side of the spectrum, where the kind of humor fell in thrash, because I don't know that I necessarily have a good frame of reference for humor in thrash.
Oh, I think the point between black metal and grindcore is probably a really good yardstick for it, because I don't think I've ever seen a black metal band have too much fun with the genre. It's definitely the least humorous of the musics, and because it's such a because it's as a music, it's so much more steeped in like the image and the atmosphere than it is the music. At least as far as I'm concerned, it lends itself a lot less to making jokes and having fun on stage. But I don't think I've ever seen a grindcore band not make jokes at some point. So having, I guess a balance between those two is being really true to the image and the stage show and the seriousness of it all, but also like having a bit of a laugh with it.
One thing about your lyrics for a thrash band that kind of surprised me is that there's been in research in metal generally, there hasn't been much focusing on lyrics, but they commonly mention that swearing is key to the scene. And I thought especially that it might be true to thrash. So I just did a quick little look, and you don't swear very much. You have 9 uses of fuck across 4 albums, 0 uses of shit, 0 uses of bitch, and only 2 uses of damn. Is vulgarity something you
I use damn? Avoid?
You use damn twice, yeah.
When the fuck did I do that?
I think it's in the form damned.
Oh, right, that's okay. Oh, so you just did a bit of a
yeah, just a quick search.
Yeah. Control.
Damned if we didn't fucking heed the words, and culture
Wise men hold the becoming storm, but pride and greed the desirable traits. It's like we always wanted to see our fate.
Well done. And culture to obey, damning pulls yourself.
Damning pulls yourself into a mindless fray.
Yes, restless till it's won. Blood will flow unheeded by your conviction.
By your conviction.
Yeah, so I guess no damn, just damning or damned. Is swearing something you try to avoid in your lyrics, or?
Definitely something I it's very rare that I think a line would call for it. Again, the fucks that I do use, the fucks that I give, would be just to add a bit of a percussive sound to the song, or to add just a little bit of a emotion. Like if you want it to be angry, but also kind of in that fed up, relatable angry. A fuck is a good. Everyone understands the word fuck. The whole world uses the word fuck, and you can get away with it. Shit and crap, absolutely not. No way. In no way should you need to use those words in a song. As far as I'm concerned, like, you can do better.
So, like, I'm thinking of songs like Strapping Young Lad has just a song that's called Fucker, which I think is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but do you consider
that's
like
Devin's.
overly... Yeah, it's Devin.
Yeah.
When you see a metal song that is full of swearing, do you find that to be a turnoff?
I just feel it's a bit... It just comes across a bit try-hard, doesn't it? Like you're wanting to, impress all the teenage boys at your school. It's not very creative. It's not very artistic. And like in anything, the more you use it, the less effect it has. If you fill a song with fucks, it's just filler. I try and avoid it, but yeah, obviously 9 times you said in 4 albums.
Yeah. I don't think for an extreme metal band, I think that's quite a low number.
Yeah, it's low.
Well, I mean, a lot of the songs don't call for it. Like a lot of the songs, lyrically, it wouldn't make any sense if you're singing about like a genocide at any point for you to be like fuck. It just doesn't really work for me.
I mean, but you do say that there's anger, right, in thrash, and swearing is traditionally associated with expressions of anger. You don't see any overlap there?
Yeah, but I think fuck's become such a universal word for almost anything. So the times that I would have used it, obviously, it also depends on I think we were talking before about like the sound of the music fitting in with the lyrics. I don't think any of the fucks that I used would have been in any of the darker songs. They'll be in the more kind of straight up, balls to the wall thrash songs that I've written, where it's just kind of a no nonsense approach. Oh God, I sound like a marketing pitch for my own band. Those are the times I probably would have dropped a fuck just to be like, I don't know. Sometimes a line comes to you in a song, like when you're writing the lyrics, a line comes out and you don't really know you've written it until you've written it down, and then it's stuck. Like you can go, I don't like that line, I'm going to change it, but nothing will ever come to you because that's what naturally came out of you. And a few of those times, I think a fuck would have been in there.
Interesting.
In terms of like the most commonly occurring words, I did actually do a quick kind of a concordance search of your lyrics and stuff.
Capitulation. Capitulation's going to be right up there.
Oh, look, I was definitely going to ask you about that, actually. Like, in general, it seems like you've got a really high number of Asian words.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a particular, like, reason why you have a, really strong preference for... Is it just their length, or... Yeah, what is it?
Absolutely, it's their length. it's their length, and it's the infrequency that people would, typically use them. There, I'll admit there's definitely times when, I could use a different word, but I'll use the one that, I've very rarely seen. Because it kind of, it forces me to, work on my vocabulary as well. Like if I see a word and I commit it into a song, it means that I'm going to start using it from then on because I'm at least aware of it. So there's plenty of songs where I would have never ever seen before in my entire life, or like I've only ever heard of, but I would find them and they would fit for the song, and I would be like, yep, I'm going to use that one because now that's a song that's a word that I know. Right.
Yeah. So I suppose, like, what is it specifically about like those words that seems to convey that effect? Like, I mean, obviously, yeah, they are longer. I'm just interested in like, I suppose if you're anticipating your audience not to necessarily have familiarity with these terms, I guess like what's then the design behind their use?
The beautiful thing about anything, I think it's anything from like 5 syllables or above. There's so many different ways that you can apply the one word like rhythmically. Like you do like there's like you can do like your quick three and then drag out the rest of the word, or you can like break it into kind of like iambic pentameter almost, where you can just be like da 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 da. Like there's so many ways you can utilize large words, and because it's all one word, it's it's a lot easier to get like one large word out in an interesting way than it is to get like several words together in an interesting way. So it's a good way of like adding a bit of creative flair. And it's, it's great when you're in the studio and you've got this one word and there's like 4 different ways that you'll actually deliver it rhythmically. And then you'll listen back to them and be like, I think that's the one that's the one that sounds the best. Yeah, larger words just kind of allow you that freedom.
Is there a bit of like, haha, check out my vocabulary kind of
Absolutely, 100%. I'm not even going to lie. That's very much the case. I've got nothing to add to that as well. Like,
yeah. I was just wondering then, are you trying to create a barrier for the listener, or is this something that's just going to happen as a natural consequence of you trying to, I suppose, draw on a more elaborate vocabulary?
I don't expect people to listen to my songs and hear words that they don't know and be like, fuck this guy, how dare he speak to me in this way. My hope would be that they go, what the fuck does that mean? And then look it up. Like that's my perfect world, is if someone comes away from listening to my album having learnt a couple of extra words, then, I've done more than most of their fucking English teachers would have done in, 7 years of tertiary education.
Well, this is really interesting because there is a common, especially outside the metal scene, of course, opinion of metal is like, inarticulate, low culture, uneducated, which this popular image contrasts heavily with the desire of not just you, but a lot of metal bands to, use big, difficult words. Do you think this disconnect is just basically a misconception, ignorance, or is it something that you think originates in a different area?
Look, it's obviously some of it's from what people would know of heavy metal, which is all of the bigger popular bands. I can only imagine how much damage Rob Zombie did to the image of metal lyrics over the years. Of course, if you can't understand the words that someone's saying, like if someone's putting a whole song together with lyrics that you can't understand, my assumption would be that it's because they didn't write anything good. Like if I was a non-listener of the genre, you'd just be like, well, he's probably got nothing interesting to say, so he's mumbling it and growling it. So it's mostly our fault that metal is perceived the way that it is, and we do our best to make sure that obviously not me in particular, but there's this weird kind of insistence that metal is unpopular, and people seem to prefer it that way. Like people seem to prefer it to be like this underground movement that you have to be part of a special club to listen for, and like people get really angry if a Kardashian will wear a Slayer shirt, and you're like, why? This is great publicity for me. Like if people are going to start listening to a music that I play, I'm fine with it. But there's this insistence on us being like removed from the rest of society, and the less people understand or appreciate what we're doing, almost the better in a lot of people's eyes. And it's only our fault if the takeaway from it is that we have reasonably low common denominator lyrical content.
So you think the insularity and the kind of desire to hide metal and keep it a secret club is preventing people from accessing that some of the trends are interested in things like language use, or what you said, like an English teacher might teach, vocabulary, artistic imagery and stuff, and it's kind of being lost in partially, of course, just people not liking being screamed at, but also the metal scene trying to push away outsiders.
Yeah, it's people feel what they don't understand, and people are going to dislike things that they don't know. But the same thing would be said of any one of your metalhead friends would probably have nothing nice to say about the lyrics of any rap artist. But I'm sure we all know for a fact that they write some incredibly well thought out prose a lot of the time, and they have like some incredible lyrical work is done by these artists. But because they're not what we like, we go, it's obviously crap. And it's obviously moron stuff for idiots, and that's just how I think society works a lot of the time.
I mean, that kind of leads me to. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, a lot of options. So I just wonder, do you think your lyrics have personally been influenced by hip hop at all?
Oh God, no. I know that it's good, but I don't listen to it.
Okay.
I'm like, everything's good. At the end of the day, every single genre of music has a redeeming quality, because otherwise it wouldn't exist as a genre of music. And regardless of whether or not I personally listen to it, I can at least know that stuff's being done creatively that I haven't heard, couldn't comprehend, and won't understand. But I would never cast aside the entire genre based on my personal preferences. But yeah, no hip hop for me. Oh, except Cypress Hill. Black Sunday's a killer record, so
the songs about metal songs about beer out, hip hop songs about marijuana in.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, it's different. It's different for them. I'm sure that's what they'll tell you at least. Metal songs about marijuana. That's where the future is.
That's your next challenge.
Green metal.
Okay. Yeah, it's a new field. So I suppose talking about like trends in metal lyrics and stuff, I did notice that some of the words that really commonly appear in your lyrics are comparable to those that appear like more generally in metal lyrics, like independent of subgenre, like such as lexemes, which are like a collection of words that conjugated differently relate to the same kind of core word, which is death, blood, war, battle, words to do with like life, general reference to like
stuff, you know?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, do you think that's kind of like representative of the common themes that permeate your lyrics, and I suppose metal lyrics more generally?
I'd say that's pretty standard to be singing about those kind of things for this music. The line that I always give interviews when they ask me about where I get my lyric ideas, I just tell them that it's angry words for angry music, because obviously if you're writing aggressive music, you need to have something to be aggressive about. And it's always been difficult living such a privileged existence as I do in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, Australia. Really haven't ever wanted for anything. And it's hard for me to, personally write about, struggles or issues or, my own battles. But it's very easy to write about, the evil that men do on a global scale, and the horrible things that have happened historically and will continue to happen, because that's, the general perception on human nature.
Right. Well, that's been something I found quite interesting about your lyrics, is when there is kind of reference to violence, often it's produced in a way that I suppose I wasn't really expecting, which is it seems to be oftentimes in reference to either a group of people or even like humanity, or yourself as the speaker speaking as a violent entity. Like it seems to be less of, I suppose, a common trope of the singer kind of producing lyrics that I suppose could be interpreted as if the speaker is enacting violence on the listener, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I've got a.
Sorry, I can reframe that question if you like. There's quite long-winded.
It's all right, because I was genuinely thinking, because I do have some violent lyrical songs, particularly about the songs from the point of view of a violent man inflicting carnage and aggression upon other people, and it's something that interests me, because like violence is a terrifying kind of concept. It's not something that I've ever. It's not something that I've ever really leaned into or struggled with personally, but we all know people, or we've all witnessed like how much like that kind of bloodlust can take over a person, and like people that will act outside of reason or logic, or even a situation, and they will it's like that primal thing gets tapped at, obviously the ancestral recombinant DNA that tells them that they need to murder anything that might be a threat or a challenge or a competitor to them. And it's kind of like it's a scary concept that you would not be able to control that. And I've definitely written songs about being in that situation, about like not only like not being able to control your urges, but like lusting for them and like reveling in the kind of desire to inflict carnage.
Well, I see an interesting kind of, I don't want to say disconnect, but opposition to something you mentioned earlier, which is that, for instance, you said that you believe religion is the cause of a number of ills, and this kind of motivates you to write songs about religion. So there's some kind of connection with your belief, but you then say that you've never really committed violence, but you like writing kind of songs from that perspective. Do you ever struggle to differentiate, like, this is a song that comes from something I believe versus this is a song that's just a concept I'm exploring? Like I endorse this message, but I'm taking distance from this message. I'm just exploring it. Is that something you ever struggle with, or have you had fans have been like, oh man, I love like the encouragement of violence here, and to be like, whoa, no, I'm not
that is terrifying that someone would do that. But it's I'll deserve it if it does happen, because I don't exactly paint it in so much as a negative light. My observations of the evil that men do on a global scale, and like the condemnation of an entire group of peoples for their actions, or an entire nation of peoples for their actions, on one hand, and then to have a song from the perspective of an individual that kind of glorifies his individual actions, which is at the end of the day all that anyone can really be held responsible for. I'm not sure. I never really fine-tooth combed it that much to think about the dichotomy that I've got going there. But I might be more wary of it now.
Sorry.
Yeah, even more songs about camellias on the next album, guys. Wes has given me a complex.
It's kind of interesting because, I mean, yeah, there certainly are, many examples in your lyrics where you're talking about, I suppose, speaking as someone committing violence or wanting to commit violence against somebody else, but it seems like there's a lot of reference to either violence that the speaker yourself is experiencing, or just kind of negative emotions that you're experiencing yourself. I mean, it seems like that's like even perhaps more common than reference to violence against the hearer. And I suppose, like, I was wondering then, like, relating this to the discussion of what represents your own experience and your own views, and what represents, kind of an idea or a concept that you're exploring that's quite independent of, you yourself as a person. Like, how do you kind of navigate between, like, those two, I suppose, areas of expression, like, talking about things that you've personally experienced and personally felt versus just concepts that exist in the world that you're reflecting on?
I mean, in all of the albums and all of the lyrics that you've perused over, obviously with some detail, it seems. There's very few of those songs that I would consider to be like a personal a thing for me. Like almost everything I write is based on observation of a world event, or a historical event, or even a concept that you're aware of because of popular culture. There's very little that I do lyrically from within, I guess. Like even some of the stuff that I write, even the harrowing, the songs about how destitute situations are, and how how dire our outlook is, and how people are kind of bred and molded into this existence that isn't terribly enjoyable for them, but they're told that it's what they should want, so they do it, and they all just kind of march slowly onto an inevitable end for the sake of the profits of other people. Those might be an artistic interpretation of a modern society, but it's not something that particularly bothers me personally. It's just it's such a broad thing to explore, that lyrically you can have so much fun with it as a song goes on, about all the different the different ways in which that existence is kind of carved and molded for each individual person.
Do you think that, like, if you walked up to someone on the street and you're like, hey, wage slave existence, that's a fun idea, that's fun, you might not get necessary agreement, but do you think in the metal scene people are kind of conditioned or socialized to sort of take we are exploring these dark topics as a source of enjoyment? Is that something you think that's kind of learned or accepted within the scene that might differentiate it from others?
I think it's something that sings to the scene a lot. As I'm sure you guys are both aware, the heavy metal community is broad in its broad in its strokes, because it's kind of a music of an outcast. And I'm not sure if we need to go into this too much, but it's music for the people that never really fit in, because they end up finding another family through it. And it's often the people of it's the music of people that struggle a lot with a lot of things. And I just find that as a general observation, the idea that life's pretty unfair and pretty intolerable, and humankind is quite shit, is quite popularly shared within heavy metal, both in the bands and in the fan base. And if you can lyrically acknowledge that, or kind of address that, it's something that people can get behind quite easily. It's not a great, fun, pleasant topic, and that's why it hasn't got a huge amount of broad appeal. But it's definitely singing to, it's preaching to the choir, if you will.
Do you think it's therapeutic in a sense?
I think so. I think it would help. If you hated everything and then you listen to music of other people talking about how it's because it all sucks, you'd at least feel validated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's probably people that are quite violent in nature that listen to the songs and go, it's normal to want to kill people then, which is unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of like the interesting thing about the ambiguity that seems to kind of be unavoidable when you're writing lyrics that could be interpreted as either being representative of, your personal experiences, your personal views, or representative of the particular kind of persona that you're embodying within that song.
Yeah, that is, I don't know, I guess it's not something that ever worried me, just because of what this genre has historically done. Obviously Cannibal Corpse are the one that's going to come up, but the things that they sing about are horrific, and it's quite often from the point of view of the perpetrator of those horrors.
Right.
So you don't ever go into a song being like, fuck, are people going to think that I actually want to do this? Because that it's been done 1,000 times.
On the other hand, when they go into a song where you're critiquing religion or something, or critiquing a specific society, they might go in thinking, oh, this person has issues with religion or issues with society, right?
The problem with those religious songs is always Christianity, because that's the only one that you can kind of get away with scot-free. you can say what you want about Christianity, and no one's ever going to be like, "Hey, ease up!" Like, you can't say that.
Well, we actually found that a little bit of bands that are actually located in non-Western contexts do sing about non-Christian religions a lot more.
Well, yeah, I would love to write about other religions, but I know so little about them. It would be ridiculous of me to make songs about the the influence that Islam has had on my life, because it's had virtually none.
Mm-hmm. So you think some kind of a definite like background and knowledge of the topic is really key to writing a good song about it?
It definitely helps. Yeah, I wouldn't write things. I try not to write stuff that I don't know anything about. But in the same way that I try and avoid conversations in which I have little to no business or knowledge.
Fair enough.
It's why would I write lyrics about something that I didn't understand? Because it's if I don't understand it, how could it possibly affect me?
Yeah, that's interesting then, because again, if we kind of relate that back to discussions of talking about like your own personal experiences versus.
Oh no! Why would I write lyrics about being a psychopath? I don't understand that. I think all right.
But you did mention that some of the feelings of like exploring feelings of anger or disappointment, etc., kind of motivate those songs in a way, right? And that's something that people feel.
Yeah, I'm really worried about anything incriminating I've said now.
No, it's interesting though, because I mean, it's kind of similar to like a really pervasive like passion for like horror that's common to like a lot of metalheads, like independent of their like enjoyment of metal music, right? I wonder if there's kind of a similarity there.
Yeah, I guess it's all about shocking and upsetting with the horror and the music that they listen to. There's also horror's also got that dark imagery that is attractive in heavy metal.
But it's not shocking and upsetting to your fans, though, is it?
No. I don't think anyone's ever come back to me and said, "Geez, settle down, Mr. Hudson. That's what you're saying there is a little bit much."
Well, I wonder if it relates to what you were saying earlier regarding like having the freedom to explore topics that you would normally not necessarily feel perhaps able to explore, at least as openly, outside of the metal scene.
Yeah, no, you do. There's things that you will sing about in heavy metal that I don't think any other genre would do. And there's like a weird like bluegrass movement of singing about some really messed up stuff. But that's like you write horrible lyrics for aggressive, angry, dark music because it makes sense. But then there's movements of just kind of juxtaposing that hilarious like upbeat banjo kind of clanging music with song like murder ballads. And so that also works like creatively, but yeah, generally the things that you would sing about in heavy metal don't make too much sense to other styles of music and other feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it absolutely does. Yeah.
In finishing, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Oh no.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that to you. That's not why people are listening to your podcast.
No, but I mean, you're here. You do have a new album in the works, right?
Yeah, there's a single drop next week. It'll be out November 13th. So it's like the fourth release. On the note of lyrics, this is the most personal I've ever been lyrically, where I actually decided to write some songs about a personal experience or two. And they weren't about killing people, Jess, so you can relax on that front.
Thanks, yeah, just to confirm.
It's all right, man. I know you were worried about me.
We're happy that this podcast is not turning into something that will be played in court.
Yeah, well, that was my main concern. Is that if anything, I'm going to at least have to not commit any heinous crimes, because now I've got an hour and a half of recorded evidence of me thinking about it, and a couple of albums of me confessing to it, pretty much. So.
Well, good. We're putting you on a nice moral direction then.
Exactly. Yeah. Keeping me accountable. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
This was awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for doing this. It was.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
All right.
I'll leave you guys to enjoy your weekend.
Cool. No, thank you so much for your time. This was seriously fantastic.
Thanks for the great questions. Yeah, you did good. It was enjoyable. I'll chat to you later.
Okay, peace.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye.
Cheers, dude. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for listening to Lingüa Brütallica. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you stay tuned for our next episode. Before we leave, we just wanted to acknowledge that this podcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.